Next up, we're talking about Shadowmoor. In this video, I'm going to be talking to you guys about the lore of Shadowmoor, as well as some fun facts about the set when it came out back in 2008. So let's talk about the release and set details. First, I'll go over this, and then I'll get into the lore later on in this video. Some fun facts: Shadowmoor contained 301 cards, which contain 80 rare, 80 uncommon, 121 common, and 20 basic land. It is the first set of a so-called mini-block, the second being Eventide. It is also a large expansion released in May, when usually a small expansion is released. Together with the previous Lauren block, they formed a 4-set mega-block. So Shadowmoor takes place on the plane of the same name, which is a reflection of Lauren, the setting of the previous block. Shadowmoor does not continue any mechanics or themes from Lauren and often inverts them. For example, when Lauren had a sub-theme involving 1-1 counters, Shadowmoor uses -1, -1 counters instead. When Lauren contained only a few multicolored cards and Morningtide none, Shadowmoor contains many multicolored cards. The races native to Lauren also appear in Shadowmoor, but some switch color alignment. Additionally, a race of artifact creatures called Scarecrows is introduced. And over here we have one of the cards called Blazethorn Scarecrow, which came out in the Shadowmoor set. So let's talk about the release and set details some more. The strongest theme of Shadowmoor is the usage of hybrid mana, which can be paid with mana of either of two colors. The mechanic was first introduced in Ravnica Black, but is heavily expanded in this and the following set, Eventide. Shadowmoor focuses on allied pairs. Every basic land in Shadowmoor is part of a 2-card diptych. The expansion symbol of Shadowmoor is alternatively interpreted as a batwing, a dead leaf, or the jack-o'-lantern lid from the Reaper Keen. The Keen of the Scarecrows. The latter is the official reading. And right here's the symbol, right here. To me, it looks more like a half a batwing more than anything. Let me know what you guys see down in the comments below. So let's talk more about some details. Shadowmoor expands on its hybrid theme with the introduction of monocolored hybrid mana. This mana cost can be paid by either 1 mana of a specified color or by 2 mana of any color. The converted mana cost of these cards is the highest possible. Another new feature was the untap symbol, which is used as a cost, allowing a permanent to be untapped to produce some effect as listed on the cards. The card must be tapped to use that ability, just as cards with a tap must be untapped. This ability appears primarily in white and blue. Right here we have Crackleburr. Here's the hybrid mana, either blue or red. And then there's also the untap symbol right here. So just to showcase a little bit of the cards right there. And I love the artwork too, really cool. Further, the set includes a cycle of lands that have basic land types, despite not being basic lands. To prevent them from being strictly better than basic lands, these enter the battlefield tapped. However, they can also be used for a specific, somewhat weak effect if its controller also controls at least 2 permanents of the appropriate color. I don't have any examples of these, however, I do have an example of one of the new keywords introduced in the set, Wither. Let's kind of go over the other ones first, though. Conspire. As you play the spell, you may tap 2 untapped creatures you control that share a color with it. When you do copy it, persist. When this creature is put into the graveyard from play, if it had no -1/-1 counters on it, return it to play under its owner's control with a -1/-1 counter on it. And then Wither, which is what I'm showcasing here in Hate Flare. This deals damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters, primarily in red, black, and green. As you can see, I mean, it's red, so it makes sense. And then also here's the untap symbol again. So let's go into the flavor and storyline of Shadowmoor. Lauren in Shadowmoor is a remote plane with 2 aspects. While Lauren represents day, Shadowmoor is night. I made a video yesterday about Lauren, so go check that out if you haven't already. Lauren basically is the bright side, like they said before, and then Shadowmoor is night. Lauren actually switches to Shadowmoor every 300 years or so, an unnatural event triggered by the Great Aurora, which I talk more about in the previous video. Shadowmoor was once the world of Lauren. In fact, in a sense, it still is, but thanks to the Great Aurora, everything's changed, as I mentioned before. Where it was once constantly sunny, now it is always night, steeped in gloom and fog, and with only cold moonlight to light the skies. Once clear waters have turned brackish and chill, the howling wind creaks, the brittle branches of rotting trees. Life, once abundant, either struggles to survive or is twisted into something vicious and cruel. This is not a world of despair, but of oppressive terror and constant death. Lore in Shadowmoor does not stand out in the blind eternities. It resides in a region of dream and aether that obscures it from most planeswalkers. It is also one of the few known planes in the multiverse where humanity has not flourished. The plane is considered to be spark blind. So let's talk about Shadowmoor some more. The former inhabitants of Loren don't recall their previous lives and remember having always lived in Shadowmoor, because every 300 years it changes from Loren to Shadowmoor. So if there's a creature living in Loren and it turns into Shadowmoor, they do not remember anything about Loren. There are, however, a handful of beings who retain their memories. For example, the storyline's latest Great Aurora, Aisling, Bridget Bailey, Marlin, Ona, the Vendilion Clique, Roisin Meanderer, and the Sapling. And here are two images of these guys. You have Marlin on the right, and then the Sapling on the left. Let's talk about Shadowmoor some more. I have a couple of cards here. Some inhabitants of Shadowmoor, the Kithkin, and then this is a Kelpie on the right there. So another difference between the two planes is that some creatures who are dormant in Loren are actually active in Shadowmoor, while others now hide from sight on the new plane. Orphis, Korrigans, Pukas, Kelpies, Scarecrows, and Nightmarish mythical beings that have slumbered beneath Loren's surface have re-emerged in the ambient night. What races have survived the change had been thoroughly altered by a tainted darkness covering Shadowmoor. In particular, the demeanor of each race has taken a toll for the worse. What does that mean? The Kithkin have become withdrawn and distrusting of the other inhabitants of the plane, and the Bogards are now violent brutes. The Flamekin now call themselves the Cinders, have lost their passion and become hateful shadows of themselves. Giants have lost their intelligence and rely in their basic instincts. The Merrills are spiteful pirates and raiders who lurked in the murky rivers. The tree folk are warped skeletons of bark and branches, and the playful changelings have become the malicious mimics. So as you can see, we have the theme of bright and awesome and radiant in Loren, and now it's the exact opposite in Shadowmoor, where it's just ugly and creepy creatures set out to kill you, essentially. The elves, in contrast, were one tribe to experience a more positive difference. They became the last remnant of Loren's older idyllic environment. Pressed by hostile conditions, the elves were forced to battle for their very existence. Rather than lording over the plane and oppressing the other species to conform to the values of beauty and grace, the ironic reversal in their situation shifted the elves from arrogance to humbled self-preservation. The only race that remained mostly the same is the Fae, because they are protected by Una's magic, and thus have remained mischievous and unpredictable. And on the right here, I actually have a picture of Una, who is a Fae, and she is a black-blue creature. So let's talk about some creatures and flora of Shadowmoor. I'm not going to list off everything, however, I think this kind of goes to show you what kind of creatures we're dealing with in Shadowmoor. We have the Cinders and Elves and Faes, like I mentioned before, Kelpies. Right here on the right, we actually have a Redcap, and the Redcaps are typically goblins, but stronger versions of them, and more deadly and brutal, which kind of is very it encapsulates what Shadowmoor is all about. Some flora, we have Nettleweed, Dawnglove, Briarberries, and apples. There's also in the depths of the waters, we have krakens and leeches and stuff like that. So that's basically the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm curious to know what you guys think about this. Do you want me to talk about more lore videos in the Magic the Gathering's history? And if so, which ones do you want? While you're commenting, don't forget to click the like button on the way down and subscribe too while you're at it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have a great one. Tutor out.